Hello Internet, welcome to the channel. My name is Frankie, and in today's video we are building for a very special animal, and that is the Eurasian Lynx. We are back in our mini Halloween zoo, and we're getting right to the end of it now. This is one of the last two animals I'm going to be building for in this zoo, and it is the start of our forest as well, because this whole little village is going to be submerged within a really dark, thick forest. And what better animal to house in that area than the Eurasian Lynx? So what we're doing right now is we're just creating a little offshoot of path. This habitat is really going to be nothing fancy in terms of the actual infrastructure for it. It's going to be one of the only habitats that have been purposely built. So far, this zoo, the idea has been that it's an old village and people's gardens and stuff have been turned into habitats for the smaller animals like our badgers and armadillos and stuff. Anything cute and cuddly has been put inside these garden walls. But here we are going for our first proper purpose-built habitat. And for that reason, it's going to be really basic because this zoo didn't have a whole lot of funding when it first opened. So it really is simple. It's just a chain link fence and it's a rectangle. That's something I really don't do very often on the channel. I think I've only ever done it like twice. But I want to prove that even if the shape and the fencing is really boring for your habitat, you can make something look really nice. So all I'm doing is I'm setting the length of my fence to 4 meters long, so it's nice and uniform. Putting the angle snap on for 15 degrees so that we can get a perfect 90-degree angle in each corner. And we're creating a big rectangle for this habitat. I'm then going to increase the height of the fence to 4 meters tall because these animals can jump pretty high and they climb and stuff. So I want to make sure they're not getting out and accidentally eating any of our guests. And we're also going to put a climb-proof barrier on the inside as well, just to help with security even more. One of the small but hopefully pretty effective changes that I can make to this habitat is the terrain and altering it in ways that will add a little bit more interest to the habitat. So my basic idea is to elevate the back portion of this habitat, not by much, literally like maybe a meter. That's all we're going to go up by, and then dip down a little bit at the front as well to allow for a natural water source. And then we can have the slope that leads to this raised area at the back be covered in rock and stuff later on, and that'll just add a little bit more interest to this habitat rather than it just being completely flat, as that is kind of what we've done with the fencing as well. We want to mix it up and make sure that the interesting bits are on the inside. Make sure it looks really dynamic and interesting inside, but still fairly natural. We don't want to go too over the top, make it seem as if though it's really man-made, because like I said, this habitat has been put into this zoo when the zoo was first kind of opened as our first man-made habitat. So the funding really wasn't great, so the limitations are in place. We're making it quite simple. For the enrichment items for this habitat, I can start to place them before our lynx even arrives because we know exactly what animals are coming in here, and we can space it out as much as we want as well. Because of how we've laid out this habitat, it means that our zookeepers will be able to access any portion of it, meaning that we don't have to keep the food related items to one specific area. We can actually space it out as much as we like. So I thought I would hide the really tall feeder in the back where it's going to be quite densely covered in trees and stuff, because it will blend in quite nicely. We're also going to have a few play items and stuff, and I am going to put a climbing frame in here because, as with most big cats, the lynx does enjoy a good climb, but we're going to wait till later to do that, just so that we have a general feel for the layout of the habitat once we've added a bunch of plants and stuff. Speaking of plants, we're not going to put in a scratching post, but instead we're going to put in a scratching tree, just because it really lends itself to that natural and organic look and feel that we're going for with this habitat. The terrain distribution needs for this animal are really quite loose. They kind of enjoy basically everything, which is awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of as much of the long grass as I can and replace it with short grass, just because I really don't like how long grass looks. And then we're going to introduce some soil patches as well for a bit of variation to make it look a little bit more natural and to make the ground look more interesting as a whole. Now, as I said earlier, we get to move on to what is easily the most satisfying part of this habitat, and that is making it into a forest. Now, as with most forests in the UK, people seem to believe that it's just kind of, you get a pine forest or whatever, but that isn't really the case here. Where forests have been destroyed over time for wood consumption and stuff, people have replanted trees in completely straight rows, and they're normally the same species, and it's not great for biodiversity because it becomes stagnant. All the same nutrients is being sucked out of the ground, the land becomes barren, there's not much recycling. So we're trying to replicate a more natural approach to a forest, and that means lots of different species of trees. We're going to try and aim for all the different species available to us given the temperate and taiga biomes that we've put as our filters. We could have also had grassland and tundra, but those two kind of wouldn't fit too well with the rest of the zoo, so I decided to keep it to taiga and temperate instead. And we're putting our trees in place first because they're kind of the most important thing for this habitat. We really want a nice tree line at the back, make sure that it's nice and dense. This will later be carried on to kind of surround the entire area. The whole of the edge of the zoo is going to follow this kind of pattern with this really nice lush mix of trees that create a nice dense forest around the perimeter of our zoo. Now, as I said earlier, we are going to start placing some rocks at the edge of this watering hole kind of area where the ground starts to slope. Just makes it look a little bit more interesting by having these different textures in our habitats, and it kind of helps to make the slope look a little less strange, makes it look a lot more believable in my opinion. So adding rocks is always a great way of blending different heights and stuff when you've been messing about with terrain. Once I'm happy with all the rock work, I then move on to adding some bushes, and that includes things like brambles and hawthorn and rose bushes. We just want, again, a lot of variety in the types of plants that we've got here to make it seem like a more believable ecosystem. And we do those first to try and help sculpt the general shape of the habitat. So we're keeping most of the big bushes near the back of the habitat, keeping the front fairly open because that's where our guests are going to be able to see into, and it allows for an excellent viewing opportunity when the animals come to drink or feed because those areas are slightly more open. Once the rest of the large plants are in place, we can move on to creating a template that we can copy and paste throughout the habitat for general ground coverage. Fortunately, these animals can have up to a 100% coverage when it comes to their plants, which is amazing. So we're going to create a template from some bracken and some smaller bramble bushes that will act as a really dense ground covering, and we can copy and paste that throughout the entire habitat and then come back afterwards to put in some spots of colour with various little outcroppings of flowers. Some little flowery bushes and stuff just to add that pop of colour. And with most of the habitats I've done so far, we've been relying on things like candles and pumpkins for lighting, but that doesn't seem right in something that is quite so densely packed with foliage and is fenced off. With the walls, it's a bit safer. I mean, the candles are at very precarious angles balanced on those walls, but if it fell, you can reach over and grab it. If something falls in here, it's a dangerous predator, it's a bit more difficult. So instead I'm going to light this habitat by using some of the massive glow in the dark mushrooms, and they are just going to be hidden amongst the dense foliage at the back of the habitat to really help with the sense of depth with this enclosure. And then at the front we will have some of the wall mounted torches on some of the beams of the fence just to help light it up at the front as well. We're going to add one of the signs that we've made for the other habitats where we have sunk one of those lovely flat signs inside of some wooden pieces to make it seem as if though it is written on the wood. We're going to bring that over, put Eurasian Lynx on it, and then pop the head sign piece from the Europe pack on there. Unfortunately, the European animals don't have the same lovely illustrative styles for their signs. They're a little bit more cartoony. I'm not the biggest fan of them, but they will do for what we are trying to achieve here. I've also popped the climbing frame into the habitat as well, just in the middle, kind of a bit further forwards as well out of the tree line so that our guests can get a good view of them climbing about on that. And in terms of this habitat, it's kind of done. If you have watched to this point in the video, I am very, very grateful. And I would appreciate it if you subscribe to the channel if you're not already, because we are nearing 1,000 subscribers and that is the end of year goal. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed already. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.